final item of business today is members' business debate on motion 23220 in the name of Ruth Maguire on 70th anniversary of Human Rights Day, and this debate will be concluded without any questions being put. Would those members who wish to speak in the debate please press the request to speak buttons, and I call on Ruth Maguire to open the debate for around 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and can I begin by saying how grateful I am for the cross-party support from our Parliament in acknowledging the 70th anniversary of Human Rights Day and allowing this debate to go ahead. 10th December 2020 marks 70 years since the UN invited states to celebrate an International Human Rights Day, marking the adoption of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights in 1948. Human Rights Day is an international reminder of the critically important progress that still needs to be made to protect and realise human rights to their fullest extent, and one where we can look to states to continue increasing progress in human rights. With that in mind, I want to take the opportunity this evening to echo concerns raised over the UK Tory government's intention to review the Human Rights Act. We must be alive to the threat to human rights protections in Scotland and indeed of weakening citizens' rights right across the UK post-Brexit. It's absolutely crucial that clarity is received about the scope and impact on devolved matters and Scotland's separate legal jurisdiction of this review. My understanding is that there's been no consultation with the Scottish Government, and I wonder if, in summing up, perhaps the Minister could speak to that and update Chamber on what action the Scottish Government intends to take in that regard. As a country committed to standing up for human rights, the European Convention on Human Rights is hardwired into the Scotland Act. Any plans from the UK Government to bypass the devolved governments or water down protections must be robustly challenged. The COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted states' approaches for human rights globally, with governments being required to balance the need for restrictions to save lives with the potential impact on the human rights of their citizens. This year, as we live through the pandemic, we've seen deep-seated existing inequalities that have stubbornly persisted for decades highlighted and in many cases exacerbated. The harms caused by the pandemic and those resulting from the measures that have been put in place to manage it and save lives have not been felt equally, and our government's responses should continue to reflect that. In the decisions that are made, the importance of ensuring fairness and quality of life for all our citizens must not only be considered but acted on. Amongst it all, though, we've also seen wonderful work executed speedily with the needs of our people right at the centre. For years, campaigners had called for dignified food provision, accessible information, online classes and support with loneliness and isolation. And in a matter of weeks this year, those things became really quite mainstream. And more than that, we got to a place where no one had to sleep rough on the streets. Endeavours to respect, protect and fulfil human rights of course go beyond the immediate response to COVID-19. And at the same time as the Tory government seem intent on weakening citizens' rights post-Brexit, the SNP Scottish Government is instead working to strengthen them. As the current passage of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, UNCRC, shows, this important bill has received widespread support across a range of stakeholders, perhaps most importantly by children and young people themselves. And I think it really demonstrates our government's commitment to human rights. It demonstrates their commitment to fully realising children's rights. I'd like to end by also acknowledging the work of the National Task Force for Human Rights Leadership established by the First Minister, which is working to establish a new statutory framework for human rights that can bring internationally recognised human rights into domestic law and protect the human rights of every member of Scottish society. Scotland has an important role to play in promoting international dialogue and respect for fundamental human rights. And I want to thank every single human rights defender in our country who helps to do just that. And I would ask us all to use Human Rights Day to reaffirm our commitment to to lead by example and ensure that the rights of the people of Scotland are respected, protected and fulfilled. Presiding Officer.